Namaste and welcome to Sustainability Plus 100 Plus, ladies and gentlemen. This is an effort, a dialogue around sustainable development goals that we have done here at Network 18 in partnership with AB and BEV. So we are back with it again. And as we have done oftentimes in the past, we go state by state and try and understand the challenges and, of course, how we're working to overcome them and achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves. Circular economy is in focus, and of course, the state of Karnataka, because we are in the midst of the Karnataka State Summit. So let's get chatting and talking to people who are right in the thick of trying to achieve those goals that will ensure that over the next 100 years, there is some planet Earth, like we know it, for humanity that will come after us. So let's dive into this conversation straight away and have a look at our panelists. First up, I'm going to say namaste and welcome to Vijay Kumar Gogiji, who is the Principal Chief Conservator of Forest Wildlife and Chief Wildlife Warden, Karnataka. Vijay Kumar ji, namaskara, and thank you very, very much for joining us. And I also have with me Dr. Naresh Tyagi, who's the Co-Chair, Circular Economy Committee, FICCI, and Chief Sustainability Officer, Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail. Namaste, Dr. Naresh Tyagi. I also have with us Ashok Menonji, and Dr. Ashok Menon is the Director, Sustainability Strategy and Circular Economy, APAC and SABIC. So they're doing a lot of work in Karnataka. Ashokji, namaste. Good to have you with us. And of course, I have Vineet Sharma, Vice President Marketing, AB and BEV. Had it not been for AB and BEV, we wouldn't be having these Sustainability 100 Plus dialogues. So Vineet, good to have you with us. We also have Ashish Chaturvedi, Head Environment, Energy and Resilience, UNDP in India. The focus today is circular economy, so where we see these kind of terminologies. And let's start with Vijay Kumarji and ask him this: reuse, recycle, refurbish. So let's try and create whatever we make, we try and put it at and plow it back. How easy or difficult, Vijay Kumarji, is achieving this goal? And where is Karnataka currently?
India is passing through a phase which most of the developed countries have passed through that stage in the past, that such situation will arise. In the beginning, there will be statutory vacuum. Now, all the statutes have been put in place. And basically, Indian ethos are reuse, recycle. We never allow anything to be wasted, including food. We preserve it for next day and eat. Like that, in olden days, all of us, we used to use the clothes till they are having one hole in the somewhere in the dress. So our ethos are conservation and reuse, recycle is there in individual ethos. But when it comes to industries, whether adequate preparations are there. First and foremost thing is there should be mandatory statutes. Now most of the statutes are in place. Now we have to create awareness about the statutes, and we have to have enabling intermediaries so that the produce which is available as a waste, it is prepared as a raw material for next thing, and then it gets into the cycle, and circular economy works that way. So now we are into this phase, and we need not get disheartened. There are many things, like recently we have achieved in Karnataka, whatever wastewater is generated in Bangalore, it is treated and recycled for the purpose of supplying it to rural water bodies for underground water augmentation or recharge of underground water. This is one of the major things we have achieved for the first time in the country. Any water going out of any city, it is mostly not used that properly. For Bangalore city, we have got a wonderful mechanism where most of the treated water is used for recharging the rural lakes, so that underground water recharges, and then water is available in rural side.
Ashishji, where does India fare, globe, if we compare it with the rest of the world, developing economies, as far as this entire concept of circular economy? It's part of our philosophy as a nation, as a civilization, but how much are we putting it into practice?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this question, and thank you very much for having me on the show. As you rightly said, circularity and the principles of circular economy have been ingrained in our philosophy for centuries, for eons. Traditionally, as most of you in the show and also your audience would know, we've been working on the philosophy of reducing food waste. We've also been sort of using and reusing our clothes, handing them out within our families, but also to sort of our sort of friends and well-wishers. At the same time, over the last decade or so, there has been a strong fillip to adopting the principles of circularity. And India is actually one of the leaders, along with China, on adopting of circular economy principles around the world. As early as 2008, 2009, we were thinking about setting up a law on electronic waste management using principles of circularity. And of course, we have our several versions of the law have come in, but the principles of circularity are getting much more ingrained. In fact, the Prime Minister also announced this from the ramparts of the Red Fort a couple of years ago, that we are launching a mission circular economy. The Niti Aayog, which is the think tank of the government of India, has launched 11 committees which are sort of dealing with the topic of circularity in different sectors and in different waste streams. So I think we're doing quite a lot. Of course, a lot more needs to be done. Circularity is a big transformative agenda, and we would really need to put in our sort of best foot forward, bring different actors together, much like what you're trying to do with this program as well, who can think through this problem and then develop these alliances to work together to make this big change.
Groundwater has been a challenge as far as Karnataka is concerned, especially Bengaluru. I've lived there and I've seen, and there are certain parts which have huge amount of water, so much so that during the monsoons, the water table is right as equal to ground level. So ground level water is right there up to the surface, so there is water logging. On the other hand, they are in lopsided, so no matter how deep you dig your borewells and you push in your borewells, there is no groundwater, and that is something which was a challenge. But let's look at our other panelists and ask them this, because two of them, if not all, are into businesses which are very, very water intensive. So like for the fashion and retail, or if you look at AB and Bev into the business of beverages, there is a certain level of water consumption, and water is the biggest challenge. So in a circular economy, how do I replenish what I'm consuming? So let me ask you, Dr. Naresh Tyagiji, this is the biggest challenge. Now, if you look at beverages or if you look at fashion and retail, our biggest consumption is water. Along with that, of course, power, energy, and everything else. But when you're pulling water from the ground, how do you replenish it? How you ensure that whatever you have taken, you're also plowing it back, or you're ensuring that it is refurbished?
Thank you. I think in terms of reuse and recycle, it's not only water, all that material, natural resource, what we call, everything is very precious. And the way we consume all these natural resource is something which is very, very important, irrespective of whichever location you are, and as well as individual as a citizen. If I talk about that fashion and retail industry, this industry, if you see that Indian behavior, we always recycle and reuse. We have seen our cloth, how we getting all these recycle and reuse even through our generations. Coming to that water, being that water intensive industry, there are a lot of things which is required to be done for conserving that water. So one definitely is that how we have that less consumption, using some of the technology and innovation play very important role. How you get your material, which is use of less water, as well as in your production system. Then other point is that how we have that practice of recycle and reusing it. Every drop of water is very, very precious, and we have seen that water level going down everywhere, including Bangalore. What are that manufacturing practice which can go for conserving each and every drop of water, but same time how you recycle and reuse. For example, our manufacturing facility, we use every drop of water, whatever best possible, to recycle and reuse. 75% of our water is recycle and reuse. Even how you have that water source, which is renewable water source, like rainwater harvesting, how you get that practice to conserve the water and use it when you need it. Recycle reuse is perhaps one of the most desired thing in our industry, and some practice which make how you have that system of water debit and credit, how much water you are taking from the system and how
Yes.
much water you are releasing back to the system. And we have our own program called Re-Earth, where we have taken place that we want to give back more what we take from the ecosystem. And some of our plant and facility even has pioneer in this to become net water zero. And net water zero is nothing how you save your water every drop, and what is the maximum way to leverage in terms of recycle and reuse everywhere wherever you have industrial water use. And in last, I think putting some of the technology and innovation to have your production system where less water consumption is needed. And in this line, I think fashion and retail industry, if you see the entire value chain, a lot of water is consumed. But now I see some part of it, especially in that garment and textile manufacturing, a lot of focus on water for recycle reuse, which is giving hope that we are working in that to have less consumption of water and not waste anything in that water, and it's become more circular in water.
Increasingly we see product lines from shoes to clothing to which says this is recycled. Even now you have carriages or bags which now they're very clearly displayed up front saying that this is made out of recycled plastic, and this is once again part of the reuse aspect. So how are you going to incentivize that? There are more, is there any policy where you want to incentivize those who are actively looking at making products out of recycled material?
So I think that very, very important question you have asked, and this require a lot of behavior change. Being in B2C business, you have that consumer who need to be get convinced what you have been doing. So how you create awareness to the consumer, something is done in responsible manner, something which is made in that sustainable manner, whether it is sustainable textile or design or manufacturing system, or so how you create that kind of awareness, consumer to appreciate it. I think that is first and foremost very, very important. Uh, Other critical part is that whole supply chain. And in supply chain, material philosophy is that how that you choosing your raw material, which can be recycled, how you manufacture your product, which is recycled. So something called that life cycle analysis, how you put life cycle thinking in your product design which can be recycled, manufacturing process which is aligned to be that recycle and remade, not to have any waste in the system and all these things. So I think it's one is that your philosophy in terms of company, what you have, and to standardize and have common understanding on that, some policy level intervention, how you encourage your partner and supplier to have that more circular and sustainable fashion in your line. That is one sort of incentive where we encourage more and more internal and external stakeholder to come on board and cooperate something which is more sustainable. Other thing is that I think it's beyond supply chain, how you bring your value chain partner, how you create material which is whether pre-consumer waste or post-consumer waste, which can be recycled. And I think that is very, very critical in Indian context, because philosophically we don't waste anything. So how you bring back that whole waste, which is used by someone, it can be reused and it can be recycled and refurbished, is something where require a lot of stakeholder to come on board, and beyond one company, I think it is industry level initiative which require to have larger stakeholder engagement and ecosystem. And in that lot is early start in India, but it's
Right.
one of the very, very crucial for India to leapfrog on that sustainable practice and
Absolutely.
circularity.
Somewhere I feel that industry, government, or in terms of policy, there has to be an incentive for those who consciously are working towards, affecting a circular economy. Or even industry within cross industry should say that if you're going to recycle, I will incentivize you. If your product line is coming out of recycled products, I'll give you a certain incentive, or I'll give you pride of place on the top shelf, etc. Now that we're coming to marketing, let me ask Vineet this. You are in the business, Vineet. I keep, whenever I speak with your colleagues, you're in the business of making barley water with a bit of a kick in it. So usually I quiz them on barley, but today I'm going to push you on the water aspect. So what kind of R&D is happening? What kind of contribution is happening? Is AB and Bev also helping in building more lakes? Is it saying that it's going to create its own man-made lakes, etc., and reservoir, which will not only help the groundwater level, but you will also not be looking at the existing natural resources in terms of meeting your water requirement needs? Because India gets 96% of its water from the skies. So how you retain it, how you catch it, and how you use it, that's where the crux is.
No, absolutely. And I think there are a lot of initiatives that we as a cognizant organization have, and water stewardship is a very, very important lever for sustainability at AB InBev. And we see this another in two ways. First is improving water efficiency within the brewery is very, very important. As you rightly said, giving more rather than taking more. And addressing a lot of this community-linked water challenges, right? We have our breweries in places where water could be a challenge sometime, and we have to ensure that the communities are benefiting more with our presence, not getting lost with our presence, right, in terms of water. In fact, what we do to improve quality water access in a lot of these stressed communities, we have created a cumulative water recharge capacity to the close around 15 million hectoliters across 5 locations in India. This includes a watershed program. We have a very, very evolved watershed program. In fact, one of the global best practices that we proudly take back to our global colleagues as well. This is a watershed replenishment structures we have built, ranging from on-farm ponds to check dams and promoting and conservation of water. And also soil, right? I mean, water and soil for intelligent, sustainable agriculture. It is deeply rooted, and I was hearing a lot of other panelists today talking about the 3R strategy, right? And it's very, very deeply rooted. Our philosophy on water stewardship is actually the base of our operations and is governed by this philosophy of 3Rs: the reduce, recycle, and reuse. And this has led to a lot of efficiency in our water usage within the breweries. We also have a partnership. We do a partnership with WaterAid, where we are further addressing this, complex interdependency we have of multiple stakeholders to bring, clear KPI and clear results which are driven by actual numbers and not just like at a macro level, but literally at a micro, at a community level as well. This association, it has helped us in creating a lot of impactful demonstrations to policymakers, to state consortiums, for bringing a lot of state players together for creating new policies, making changes in the existing policies, and a lot of knowledge in the ecosystem for building a national level awareness around this issue. So I couldn't agree more. I think we as a company are dependent on this, and as you rightly said, adding a bit of a barley and malt to the water, that's one of our key ingredients. And all of these initiatives with water stewardship as a program leading the agenda is extremely important. And some of the steps I just talked about just help us make much more water efficient in AB InBev.
I'll circle back to you in just a bit. Let me just bring in Ashok Banerjee, and he's been listening to everybody. There is one aspect is R&D. The other aspect is how are we going to make companies become cognizant of what they are doing, how they are contributing? Because we don't see companies, and you're working in Karnataka. So how do you incentivize organizations to put front page ads to say, we dug up and we created 100 artificial lakes across Karnataka? And even if we used, this is our water debit, and this is the water credit. And then try and advertise that and talk about it. And of course, there is a certain level of R&D, research and development that is required in trying to push products. And I'm going to bring in Vijay Kumarji after this as we move into the aspect of bamboo. But Ashokji.
So, okay, again, thanks for your question. So, if you carefully look at it, the circular economy is still a new concept among many organizations, and they are still trying to figure out how to kind of go about with it. Some companies are more matured than others, but overall, if you look at it, whoever have kind of succeeded in certain attributes have kind of just touched the tip of the iceberg, and there is a whole lot of attributes to be kind of explored now again, coming from the R&D point and having companies kind of encourage on what they are doing from a circularity point of view. So, and there are multiple ways you could look at approaching it today. Now, if you look at even from the R&D funding point of view, one needs to kind of ensure that more and more of these fundings are coming into your R&D to make a difference. And earlier, if you see, it was difficult, but today these are kind of becoming more and more prominent as such, because the regulations that are coming up are pushing the companies to move towards this direction, and more importantly, understanding the fact that circular economy can become profitable is something that also companies are realizing slowly but steadily. Another important attribute is, in many companies today, we are talking about driving circular economy, and even in certain cases that would be linked to carbon neutrality. Many of the fundings that you require cannot be internally generated. It needs to come from external bodies as such. And for this, for example, it could be government fundings, it could be even ESG fundings as such. And many of these today are incorporating attributes of circularity for companies to secure these funds. So circular economy attributes goes beyond a short term. It's actually a long term proposition as such, wherein we are looking at decoupling your economic growth from the resource extraction in a long-term fashion. So as we are going and as these attributes are kind of coming in, more and more companies are realizing that even if, for example, Indian companies or companies in Karnataka who would like to kind of have a market, let's say in Europe, to get more premium out of their product, they need to start looking at these attributes in a more significant fashion, and it is generating profit in more than one way as such. So once the companies start realizing this, it's a journey. It may not happen immediately, but it has started happening. As long as companies start thinking it as a long-term investment and long-term ways to address not just their profit, but also in some cases permit to operate, they will start kind of incorporating these attributes to a great extent. And again, touching what the previous speaker said, at least government is also driving a lot in kind of bringing in certain frameworks or guidelines which can kind of move into policies pretty soon. As such, you have natural resource efficiency policy coming in, you have plastic waste management rules, or construction demolition waste. So these are some of the guidelines or rules that is going to get converted to policies or rules pretty soon. And it is important, the companies who are successful have kind of adopted this when they were voluntary, and sooner or later this is going to become mandatory. And if you are not doing this now and learning it, it's going to be very difficult for you when it becomes mandatory to adopt it. You will be running against time, and companies are realizing that. And again, coming back to putting ads, this is what I have done for circularity, or this is what I am looking at, will become more and more prominent as you go about, because companies, once they start taking actions, they would like to showcase this in your disclosures or in your public documents that you're tabling.
No, because what happens is that when companies start pushing it and they start advertising, they also bring in contribute to a certain level of social consciousness or societal consciousness. I want to understand from you, can this not be also part of your CSR? Because governments today and government policy says that you have to spend a certain amount of your earnings as part of CSR. So that means companies are flush with a certain level of funds. So building lakes, digging up areas, creating man-made reservoirs, and trying to contribute not just to the groundwater level, but also trying to replenish what you are going to consume. can this not fall under the ambit of CSR? Also turning around and incentivizing or somewhere as a policy declaring that all our packaging will now be recycled plastic, or say bamboo, paper made out of bamboo, or change our bottling mechanisms and use bamboo instead of plastic. Or is this not possible, or are we very, very far away as far as our research capabilities and development capabilities of trying to turn this around? Ashokji, and then I'll bring in Vijay Kumarji, because Karnataka also has a huge bamboo deposits, which until recently were considered trees, contrary to what we learned in our classrooms. And the government has now changed the policy, so we don't need to import bamboo from China. We can use the bamboo which we have in abundance because it grows anywhere and everywhere. Ashok ji.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for your question. Again, a very pertinent question. And the answer to your question is absolutely yes. And I will go one step ahead, actually. When we are talking about CSR activities, we are talking about certain actions that we are doing with respect to CSR activity. What also becomes important is measuring the impact created by these CSR activities, because these can get a little complicated in measuring the impact as such, because these are not as tangible as what you would see when it comes to you are selling a product which is sustainable. And that is where the concept of monetization comes into picture. And once you are able to kind of introduce these concept of monetizing, it could be a human capital, it could be the activities associated with CSR, or even for that matter, the actions that an organization is doing, which is impacting the society, it could be looked at from the monetization angle to a greater way. And once you are starting to do that, you are able to measure and you are able to identify the hotspots and bring in correction. So when you are saying that this is the CSR activity which I have done, as I said, I would go one step ahead and say, because of this, this is the way in which I have looked at monetizing it. There are ways in which you can look at monetizing human capital. There are ways in which you can look at monetizing your actions which are not that tangible. Of course, there are different methodologies associated with it, and there is also a body which is looking at standardizing this entire process. But a lot of companies in India have already started adopting these as a way, and that would one step go ahead and actually provide you with the extent of impact that you are creating, and wherever there are gaps that are existing, or you have a measure in place right now to kind of take it to the next level as such. So definitely CSR incentivization in a great way, and going ahead with monetizing it to kind of take this entire concept to the next level to help you to look at areas where you can kind of fix it and really continue on the improvement process to a great extent, I would say.
No, Vijay Kumarji, as policy, let's understand 2, 3, and I'm thinking as we are having this conversation, there are a lot of thoughts coming to mind. But first is about bamboo. There is so much bamboo in Karnataka, just like it is there in all the other parts of our country, even in the Northeast. Why is it not yet, despite the policy changes that the government of the day has brought in?
Into the details of bamboo, I would like to touch upon other two aspects, that is incentivization and R&D important. I think incentivization is not a criteria at all. The mandatory provision should be there. One thing is there. It is a win-win situation. Awareness building should be there. It is a win-win situation for the nation, as we are conserving the resources and then we are avoiding solid waste streaming around the country. And then it is cost cutting for the companies also. They will become more and more competitive by adopting circular economy rather than other way around. So they have to understand that it results in cost cutting. One example I will quote: thermal power stations. They had mountains of fly ash lying in their backyard, and they were not finding their place where to dump it. Like new lands were acquired, but once they put some money into R&D, and they started teaching people how to make bricks out of this fly ash. Now entire fly ash mountain has disappeared. Now people are ready to buy fly ash at a cost. What was a liability for thermal power station, now it has become a resource for sale of that product, and they are monetizing fly ash today. Similarly, another field where construction industry is mandated to use 15% of the recycled material. Lot of
Ji.
construction and demolition debris are there in the country, but they are finding their way into water bodies, compromising the reservoir capacity and spoiling the soil health and all. And construction and demolition waste, if it is made mandatory, it is already mandatory. If supply chains are created, there are recycling units, and if somebody can take responsibility of collection of construction and demolition waste and recycle it and supply it to the developer, and developer uses it, we may fall short of recycled material for construction industry. Construction industry is such a big industry in India. There cannot be any construction and demolition waste left unutilized. Such is the potential, but there is requirement of one single enabler that will ensure, like how it happened in case of fly ash for thermal power station, it can happen with all construction and demolition waste in case of construction industry, and there are several such examples. Now, after having quoted this, now I will come to bamboo. Bamboo is one of the fastest growing plant on this globe, and it can grow to the fullest height in a single year, and its yields are amazing. And there are umpteen number of uses of bamboo in terms of construction, in terms of furniture, in terms of packing material, and even for growing of seedlings and saplings also, bamboo internodes can be cut and used. Now, this has caught the imagination of everybody. Government of India has delisted bamboo from the list of the trees, and it is no more called tree. Otherwise, it was identified as a tree in case of Indian Forest Act. Other than that, like lot of hindrances were there for cutting bamboo. There was permission required by the forest department. Now, no such permission is required, and bamboo can be transported freely inside the state or from across the state, and this will ensure proper marketing of bamboo grown by the farmers, and then its transportation is hassle free, and bamboo users will get the raw material as and when it is required. Not only this, like all bamboos, why people go for Chinese bamboo or northeastern bamboo? There are certain qualities, desired qualities are there, where its pliability, its use is meant for a particular thing. Now we have to introduce such bamboos. Now a large-scale program is going on in Karnataka, wherein people are made aware of high-yielding bamboos and which are more pliable in terms of workability. If these bamboos are introduced, now there is a bamboo called Bhima bamboo. Now the demand is quite high. After having this high demand, we cannot raise bamboo seedlings traditionally by putting grass clips of bamboo internodes or seeds. Now one of the industry has come forward to develop tissue cultured seedlings which can be multiplied in lakhs and millions, and it can meet the requirement of bamboo of the farmers as a requirement for growing bamboo. And apart from this, we have to impart skills to bamboo artisans so that value-added materials are prepared and they are linked with the market.
But Vijay Kumar ji, because a different type of bamboo can be used for different things. So there is one which is strong, sturdy, which will come into construction. There are those which have got the malleable fiber and which can be used towards clothing and even in the manufacture of shoes, etc. So apparel comes into play. But the other aspect is packaging. So where is the circular economy coming into play as far as packaging is concerned? Single-use plastic now has been banned. Bottles have come back. We need you guys use, as far as beverages is concerned, a huge amount of packaging material which comes into play. So how have you tried to reuse, recycle, refurbish?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And you're bang on, right? In terms of a circular packaging, it's one of our main missions. We it's a commitment actually to deliver on the development goals that we have set up internally, as well as from the UN as well. We have several initiatives under this circular packaging mission. We talk a lot about moving from this linear model to adopt a much more circular model, right? In terms of circular packaging, to and we rightly say the make, use, remake, and reuse, right? This kind of a concept. In fact, 100% of our products will be in returnable packaging or made from recycled content. That's the mission we want to go ahead with. And mission is further strengthened by reducing the waste generation and the emissions from across our value chain, not just only at the start, but across our value chain, right? The average recycling content in aluminum the cans that we have for our beverages, is close to around 75 to 76%. The recycled aluminum in our manufacturing facility also utilizes close to 95% less energy than creating it from raw materials. So we use a lot of this concept in our cans. But bottles, you mentioned about that, Anand, 98% of our bottles are returnable, and the new bottles have close to around 35 to 40% recycled content back in them. And compared to a returnable bottle, the environment footprint of this new bottle is significantly higher. We want to stop that, and India is a big contributor to that. And we need better alternatives than the new bottles, right? So recycling is no longer an option. It is the way of working of our business, right? And if our research has shown, and we have seen that as well, that 93% less energy is consumed by a refillable bottle, which can also be used as close to 25 times as compared to a one-way bottle in which you use it, you throw it, there's no other usage of that, right? We are also continuously pushing our R&D. We're also wanting to make sure that we make new solutions or work with partners who understand the new solutions across our packaging supply chain, right? And we have potential breakthroughs, by the way. We're working with a lot of startups to reduce or replace the plastic made caps that we have on our bottles. Also, at the same point of time, the lids that we have on an aluminum can, so we are working with them to reduce that. At the same point of time, we are doing 6-packs for our beverages, where we're using barley waste. So 100% barley waste is our commitment that we would want to use to make these packs. So not to use more paper, not to use more external support, but to use our own waste that we have while making our beverages, which is barley waste, to ensure that we build this packaging. And we continue to push. We continue to work with partners. We continue to learn. We know we are one of the many players who are leading it. But I can safely tell you that we'll be the fastest, along with a lot of other partners, to not just talk about it, but have significant actions throughout a supply chain. That's our intent on this.
And my final question, what is it that can be done further to ensure that those who have not yet got onto the circular economy bandwagon get on board? So there are a few policy initiatives that have been taken by the government. Is there more that can be done at the center level, at the state level? And what can industry also do?
No, I think this is precisely what, and I would like to really sort of give credit to the government of India. The Prime Minister recently announced something called Lifestyles for Environment, a movement towards lifestyles for environment. This was announced on World Environment Day this year. And UNDP and other agencies are involved in supporting the government of India in this initiative, along with, of course, ministries like the Ministry of Environment, but also the NITI Aayog. So at the individual level, we need a big campaign which promotes lifestyles for environment, which has, of course, a significant element of circularity embedded in it. At the state government level, we need better and more efficient policies. Of course, states have developed action plans on climate change. Some states are already thinking about developing action plans on circularity. At the city level, of course, the Swachh Bharat mission is really popular and is already kind of pushing the agenda forward. But the focus thus far has been on waste management. I think we really need to think about how do we close material cycles, how do we bring more circular economy principles into practice. And at the national ministry level, I think we need to go beyond the Ministry of Environment and engage with a lot of other line ministries, like the Ministry of Industries. I've been saying for a fairly long period of time that circular economy is an industrial policy agenda. And I don't think industries in the 21st century and beyond can actually be successful if they do not adopt circular economy principles. And that would be my final message to all of you and to your audience as well, that I think industries in this century will not be able to survive if they do not adopt circular economy principles. And some of the sort of my co-panelists have already spoken about this. And I think, of course, some of them are leaders in their own field. But any industry which has to survive and thrive will actually have to think about how to incorporate circular economy principles in their sort of day-to-day operations.
Have you guys considered, and let me ask you this, considered bamboo, Vineet, as packaging? Because conventionally ale, sake would be had in wooden casks or bamboo casks. So why can't we bring that back?
No, that's very interesting. In fact, I was closely hearing when you were discussing with the other panelists as well, and you bang on. And as we move into other beer styles in India, I think someone needs to take a start, and AB InBev definitely, with its leadership in the position of innovations and working to safeguard the environment. Those are some of the aspects that we will evaluate. In fact, globally as well, Anand, we are, very in innovations, in marketing innovations. These are certain concepts that we're already testing. In certain countries, we're also trying to see results. Of course, in India, we haven't done, but maybe it's learning for myself as well. When you were discussing about Karnataka having a lot of these bamboo reserves, something that we can utilize for our beer innovations. But globally, yes, we are already thinking around this. Certain markets that you mentioned. As well, there are traditions people drink out of that. There is this is also used in beer manufacturing. But yes, we will come back on this, but after a lot of learning from our global counterparts. But definitely something on the cards after I just learned what's happening in Karnataka myself as well.
Where because it takes less water to clean a bamboo glass and they're far more sturdier. So I'm just saying that where places which AB and Bev patronizes on ground, those restaurants, bars can be encouraged to try and replace the beer mugs, the traditional glass beer mugs, with the bamboo mugs, and it could be a start somewhere there. We have little time, so let me just go back to Naresh ji and ask him one aspect. What about the late entrants? What about those who have not yet jumped onto this bandwagon? Because for a lot of companies, cost of moving to a circular style of functioning is huge. The cost ramifications are huge. The orientation is not there. And also thinking out of the box as to how best can I get on the bandwagon of reuse, recycle, refurbish.
When we talk about that recycle, reuse, and refurbish, I think it's beyond one organization, one company, and how you look that to build a whole ecosystem which is taking care of everything. For example, I was just hearing that bamboo as an example, and in textile industry, many times bamboo fiber is imported from China. So there is natural resource available. So how you have that to R&D to look for alternate option and innovation. That is one part of it. Other part is that R&D cost most of the time actually is too high. So how you keep your product quality and cost in sync with that, it's not over expensive. And you need to have that because just claiming something it is circular or sustainable, is not going to pay premium for it. And in that way, creating awareness to consumer to appreciate it is one part of it. But looking into that whole supply chain and value chain, where quality is non-negotiable, because many times perception is that if it is recycle, reuse, quality may be diluted.
Yeah.
So how you keep that quality up to the level and no compromise on quality. To do all these things, not to compromise on quality and cost, and as well as consistent supply chain, lot of innovation and R&D is required. It requires, I think, in my opinion, industry, academia to collaborate and to have that recycle and reuse. First is common understanding is required. Second, I think product, when you create the product, it need to be created in a manner where it is used more, it is made to be remade. And third, which is very important, is that you look into all that material which is renewable and come from that regenerated source. And doing all these things, you need all stakeholders.
No, absolutely. We need all the stakeholders on board. It's been a great, engaging conversation, and we want to take this dialogue forward, ladies and gentlemen. So this series will continue. I thank AB and Bev for partnering with us, and I thank all our speakers today, Ashok ji, Vijay Kumar ji, Naresh ji, and of course, Vineet. Thank you very, very much. Ashish Chaturvedi ji, thank you very, very much for joining us here on this conversation. Sustainability Dialogues 100 plus. That's Sustainability 100 plus. That's the dialogues that we are continuing. More importantly, the focus was on the state of Karnataka, a huge, immense possibilities, ladies and gentlemen. It's just that we need to open our eyes to it and realize this is the need of the hour. Circular economy is what we talked about. We continue these conversations going forward. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, we are amid the Karnataka State Summit, part of our programming plan where we look at various states and their sustainability. Also, we have the Sustainability 100 Plus Awards brewing to help us identify some of the best case studies. More on that later, but first let's jump on to our topic of the day, which is circular economy. And to discuss that and more, let me welcome Mr. Vikram Kirloskar on board. He's the Vice Chairman of Toyota Kirloskar Motors. Mr. Kirloskar, it's a pleasure to have you on board for this exciting conversation. Now, first things first, I'd like to know, we often hear words like circularity, net zero, carbon neutral. These are terms which have been hammered, and talked about for so many years and at so many occasions as well. Is it easier than done for conventional and legacy companies? What is your sense?
Well, climate change is there for real. If you look around the world, look at the glaciers, you look at the changes in weather that we're experiencing around the world, climate change is there for sure. And if we don't take actions within our lifestyles, within our businesses, within large industries and the whole ecosystem, this is going to get worse. So there are very many ways you can attack the problem. You can call it, what's a circular economy? How do you reuse, recycle, all that? But I think finally, in the ultimate thing is to use less energy. Number one, to have less carbon coming out, to use less water resources, to have less bad substances going into the air or into the ground. I think it's a combination of all these, and that's what it really means, whether you talk of net zero or a circular economy or anything like that. You asked how do companies, how do individuals go about it? I'll tell you what we are doing as a company, and then I'll tell you what is my core idea on how to make the change. For us, there are three areas that we work on. One is the product, that is the cars itself. How do you manufacture cars or the product itself, which uses lower fuel, lower natural resources, and emits less? That's one area, and we're going in that direction. Second is the whole production process itself, right from the raw material to the finished product. How it is processed, how's the energy used in that, and how we can reduce the carbon content and the water content in this entire process. And the third, of course, is society itself. How does one change society to behave in a better manner so that you use less carbon? So these are the sort of the three areas I look at, and we as a company and we as a group look at. And I can give you examples on all three.
Before we talk about that, I want to know the overall India Inc. perspective. What is it that India is doing right? And what are perhaps some potential challenges or roadblocks that you foresee in adapting this circularity?
I, as a company, can do, as a large company, what we are doing. And in our production processes, we are pretty close to zero carbon. We use probably the least amount of energy for producing a car than anywhere in the world. We are more than 100% on renewable energies in our factory. We use zero fresh water. The only fresh water we use is for canteen. The rest is recirculated, recycled, cleaned, as well as we use a lot of rainwater harvesting. Same thing regarding plastics and various other issues. So I look at what I can do rather than what India Inc. can do. And I try to teach people what we are doing, and our work in this field is open to everyone. We've started this work more than 10 years ago on how to go to zero net carbon and zero net water, and it's been effective. The second thing we are doing is we've set up an eco park. It's about a 25-acre eco park, which has a variety of sections on teaching children to be aware of the environment. What are the different issues in the environment? And we also teach them what does it mean to be what does circular economy mean? Till now, we have trained about 30,000 children, school children, and that is increasing. I firmly believe a behavioral change in our society is one of the key ways you can go towards environmental change. So we are teaching the kids, and we are seeing this effect also in their homes. We monitor it. I don't like to spend money without seeing the end effect and the end result of what we are doing. The way we approached our whole carbon reduction process also was by teaching all our team members what is the effect of carbon in their future. What is the effect on their children? What will climate change, how will climate change will affect them in the future? And that's how we got a mindset change, that let us look for every single item, whether it is one watt or one light bulb or something big, in reduction of energy and reduction of water resources and better use of water resources. And so that's how we got. So for me, essentially, it is a thought process change that is required amongst everyone, and then a behavioral change. Science is available, innovation is available, ideas are available, and you require a lot of money to do big steps. But in an industry like manufacturing, like a car industry, it is possible to continuously improve with very high return on investment as well. We are finding that going towards carbon neutral, all our actions are resulting in cost saving and a good return on investment.
Can you tell us how are the policy incentives proved useful in this journey?
It's too huge an issue for just policy incentives. I think you need education of people more than policy incentives. How will you educate people on reducing the water in your house or reducing the electricity in your house? I think you have to start at that level. How do you keep your street clean? How do you segregate your waste? How do you use less waste? How do you use less plastic? I think it's a matter of education first. Only if we can educate on that and learn ourselves and show others, then any policy initiative will be helpful. But in any case, there are some large industries which are difficult to change. There's a power sector where we are using primarily coal. We need to incentivize that to go to super clean coal technology, which is developed. Also, there's a potential use of hydrogen in fertilizer plants, in steel plants. That requires big money, and that does require policy or monetary incentive. So I think there are areas which are difficult to do without a monetary or policy incentive. which we need to do, and there are areas where one can do ourselves through education.
Okay, right. Any roadblocks other than this that you foresee, other than creating awareness and educating the masses?
It's a mental
Any other-
roadblock. A mental roadblock with every person. You have to get over that.
Right. Okay. What about R&D investments? How can we navigate the gaps in R&D that is needed to propel the adaptation of circularity at scale?
See, the moment you say, I need to get clean, innovations happen. Then you put up targets. You look at what you're doing, what is your target. You don't have to have a ultimate target. You can have a target where you improve every year. And innovations come out of that. R&D gets geared towards fulfilling that target, the difference between where you are and where you want to be. And that's, again, I think it's a thinking process, which has to be clearly appreciated. I think lowering the use of energy, lowering the use of carbon reduces your costs. So that's a great motivation, especially in manufacturing.
Okay, well said. But what do you think is at stake when it comes to industries which are perhaps late or delayed in getting on the circularity bandwagon?
Stake is the future generations. So I think people have to realize that our future generations are at stake. If the water level goes up by 2-3 feet in the oceans, a country like Maldives may get wiped out. I think these are the things which are at stake. And as we get aware and appreciate that, I think people will take action faster.
Has there been any progress on standardizing a framework for impact measurement?
Now, impact measurement is very simple. Like I said, first is how much carbon you're reducing. It's easy to measure. What are your volatile chemicals which you are emitting from your facility? You can measure that almost every day. Okay, and are you reducing it? How much water you are using? Can you reduce it? I mean, how much plastic you're using. If I'm using 10 kilos today, can I make it 9.5 kilos next month? I think it's not so difficult to measure the impact.
But does a concept like circular initiatives, does it have a sound economic rationale?
That's what I said. No, in our case, all our investments in reduction of carbon, in the circular economy, have given us direct benefit on the bottom line.
But how do you explain that to MSMEs? Because adapt.
It's the same thing. If you reduce your costs, if I use less power, if I waste less, I will reduce my cost.
How long do you think it's going to take for adapting this particular initiative and adapting this way of doing business?
I think when people realize that their children's futures may be affected, the faster they will act on it.
On that note, Mr. Kirloskar, many thanks for taking time out and joining us for this engaging conversation. And guys, I urge you to stay on with us. We have a very exciting discussion coming up on Sustainability 100+ Awards.
Welcome all to the second edition of the Sustainability 100+, and we are together now to discuss a bit more about the Sustainability 100+ Leadership Awards. Now, what is this awards really about, right? We are going live on the 1st of August. The categories which are part of this award includes climate action, water stewardship, smart agro, circular packaging, social entrepreneurship, innovation. But what really are we doing in this? The purpose of this award, if we look at a larger level, is for recognizing champions in the space, helping them get connected to corporates, government bodies, and other organizations who can help scale up their solutions, and also just generally create this ecosystem where everyone else can take inspiration from all of the success stories happening in the space. And with that, and with the theme of the mini summit today, which is more on the aspects of circularity and circular packaging, I would like to invite in Namrata. And I think Namrata is someone who's sort of the champion in the larger space of ESG and sustainability in the country. Anyone who has anything to know, do, or wants to understand in that space, Namrata is sort of the go-to person along with her organization Futurescape. So, Amrita, over to you. And with that larger theme that we have of the 100 plus awards, and also of the concept of circularity, what would be your, I would say, insight or input in terms of what lies ahead, or what should corporates or sustainability champions in general should be doing or thinking about?
Thank you so much, Ashwin. I'm really delighted to be here today as part of the Sustainability 100 Plus second edition. And circularity is one of the most critical things in our lives that needs to be part of everyday living. The biggest problem is that all our cities across the world, not just India, are full of pollution and waste. And why is that? Because there are materials in our system that cannot be absorbed in by the natural environment. So they just lie there, discarded, wasteful, and there are mountains of waste that are lying around in these cities. There is much that needs to be done and can be done if we follow a circular system. And circular system, as you very well know, is really about the fact that when you take products, make them, consume them, and the end of life of the product should actually go back either into being reused or recycled, but should not just lie around wastefully. And that's the essential part of it. And it means that all of us need to change and build in transformation in all our daily lives. So consumers need to be more mindful about their wasteful habits and practices. At the same time, large organizations also need to understand that packaging is a very important contributor to waste, as well as our products and services that are wasteful in their nature. So these kind of awards that you're talking about, that the Sustainability 100 Plus Leadership Awards, are a really interesting way to spur the ecosystem ahead.
And what do you think, Namrata, about the concept of innovation sort of transforming the way sustainability and circular packaging works? Like what is the, how is innovation an enabler basically? What would be your inputs on that?
I've always believed, Ashwin, that small changes need to be made, large changes need to be made with policy, but fundamental changes to the way we produce things, the way we make things can only happen through innovation. And why is that? Because 90% of our problems are really about the fact that either we have poorly designed products or we have the wrong materials in use. So if we were to design products in a better way, if we were to use better materials, then things might change. And it's that needs to be spurred on ahead. That can only happen through innovation. And when we talk about innovation, invariably we talk about startups. But it's not just startups, it's all of us. We can innovate around practices, we can innovate around behaviors, and organizations within themselves can start building in the entrepreneurial mindset in their employees so that they can actually figure out new ways of doing things and innovating ahead. I mean, honestly, India has the least number of patents worldwide. It's such a populous country. Why is that? Why can't we spur that thought ahead and build in fundamental innovation and science in everything?
That's true. In fact, when that question, the answer to that question, in fact, has made me look back into what we are also doing, right? When you look at the barley in our ecosystem, which is us working with the barley farmers, we have recently worked on an innovation with a startup where we are converting barley straw into packaging material. And I think for our industry in general, you have spent grain, which is like a byproduct of the entire manufacturing process, which is now also not just being recycled, but also being upcycled in many ways. So with that, I would also like to understand from you the concept of upcycling, which is also gaining so much more momentum nowadays. Because yes, reduce, reuse, recycle remains as the consistent theme and something which everyone needs to keep on doing. But how would you approach this concept of upcycling, which is now gaining momentum?
I think upcycling ecosystems need to be developed. Ashwin, see, what happens is that almost all products in the Indian environment don't really lie around wastefully until and unless you genuinely can't do anything about them. So, as a culture, we automatically upcycle many of our products. But how much do we pay for that upcycled product is the issue, right? So, would I really buy an upcycled shirt? Maybe. Would I buy an upcycled sari? Maybe. But how much value is being given to the person that actually made that effort, right? At the same time, there is huge amount of benefit in ensuring that the products that have already been made have a longer life cycle. And when we start thinking about life cycle processes, life cycle thinking, then we can actually start looking at the concept of somebody's waste, that is one person's waste, is somebody else's raw material. And when we start that process and when we start looking at it, and especially, this is true in industrial clusters where there is every organization actually, has a large quantity of waste. But if they were to think circular within themselves, magic can happen. And the same thing happens with communities and cities. So we've got into this really bad habit of throwing things around, whereas it could become part of the upcycling or the recycling ecosystem where it can drive value. And I think value creation needs to be a thought that we need to actually and look at different models that are there. And I think, maybe there needs to be innovation in not just materials and design, but in these kinds of processes and models as well.
That's true. That's so true. In fact, these are also things which we are so comprehensively now trying to evaluate through the awards also. And in fact, the insights that you're giving is also making me think of an evaluation metric like scalability of solutions, because we are also seeing so many excellent solutions which are being implemented, often by corporates, many times by young startups in the space. But we see a lot of those problems being faced on scaling up those solutions.
Yes.
So when it comes to recycling, upcycling, and the potential scalability of it, which is what we are also now trying to seek out in recognizing through the 100 Plus award, how do you think corporates in general, or even startups or smaller NGOs or social development sector players could start tapping more into the concepts of scalability? Maybe?
Scalability actually is our biggest challenge, and the issues around scalability are many. One, of course, is the fact that a business model or a new product or a new service that has been started may have traction with consumers, may not have traction with consumers. But on the other hand, if it does have traction, many times scalability also involves funding, the appropriate kind of funding and the appropriate kind of people that are associated with it. And the third and most critical element is technology. If we can handle these three issues well, then products and services around the circular economy can actually scale and scale fast, and we can have not just India level, but world-class products and solutions that become part and parcel of the circular economy. And my hope really is that in 2030, these mountains of waste go away. That is my real hope.
Thank you so much, Namrata, for those insights. And in fact, these are inspirations which we are also taking then at the larger level to look at, champions now within the space of sustainability, who are dreaming big, who are never satisfied with their results and successes that they are having, and who are constantly looking at creating simplified solutions to these really complex problems. So with that theme of innovativeness, usability, and scalability, which we are now seeking out through the 100 Plus awards, any final comments or statements or provocations from your side for for everyone in the sustainability
I
ecosystem?
would just say I wish everybody who participates in the awards the very best. And I really hope then lots and lots of people are spurred on to join in this, not just for the awards, but just for the sake of our own better living.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Namrata.
Thank you, Ashwin, for having me. It's been a pleasure.